Good morning, everybody. Welcome to vlog 17 of the 90-day vlog challenge. It is Melissa Johnson speaking, and I am the principal psychologist and the director at Thriving Mind Psychology Clinic, located here on the Sunshine Coast. And yes, we are having another rainy, windy day today. I'm actually glad to be inside in the office. So today, and actually over the next few days, I'm going to be talking about anxiety and anxiety disorders. And the reason why I think it's important to talk about is anxiety disorders are actually one of the most commonly experienced mental health conditions in Australia. They're almost double that of depression. So I thought we might spend a few days, I'm not sure how long yet, we'll see how we're going, talking about anxiety. So today in particular, I'm going to address just in general what is anxiety and some of the symptoms we might experience. I'm going to talk about what the difference is between a general anxiety disorder and the general anxiety that most of us might experience to a day-to-day basis. All right, so let's get started. So to start off, when most of us talk about anxiety, we're generally referring to something that we all probably fairly commonly experience, and this is around or to do with general worries, a sense of apprehension or nervousness, and generally we might experience some of that about an impending event that might be happening. So generally there's an identifiable cause. So let's say an upcoming public speaking event or an upcoming exam or assignment that is due. Most of us would probably experience a sense of worry or a sense of apprehension or just a general feeling of nervousness about that. And that is okay, that is completely normal. Anxiety is just one emotion on a range of emotions that we all experience, and it's okay. It's considered sort of a more natural reaction to a quite stressful situation. So that's the anxiety that most of us would refer to or talk about or experience when there's something to be concerned or worried about, like an exam. The difference between that and an anxiety disorder is that for somebody with an anxiety disorder, these anxious thoughts, feelings, and physical symptoms can become quite overwhelming, and they're fairly prolonged. So what would happen is they would experience them most days, every day, for a good few weeks to months, and it's fairly consistent and persistent, and it really starts to interfere with their daily functioning. It might interfere with their relationships or their ability to go to work or even their ability to get out and about, just depending on the type of anxiety they have. So the term anxiety disorders is a bit of an umbrella term for a number of other disorders that might fall underneath that. And so, for example, some of those things are called general anxiety disorder. We have specific phobias, so that might be, a fear of heights or a fear of flying or a fear of snakes. So that's specific phobias. We have panic disorder, agoraphobia, so the fear of being out in public in really big spaces with lots of crowds. Obsessive compulsive disorder, we have social anxiety disorder, and of course post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not going to go into all of those today. Maybe in future posts I might talk about them, some of those more specifically, but that's just to give you a bit of an idea around the big umbrella that encompasses a lot of different types of anxiety disorders. So the symptoms and the signs and symptoms that people might experience with a anxiety disorder fall under a few different categories. So the first one is most people would report this real inability, this excessive worry, and a real inability to switch off, okay? And generally this worry is about nothing at all, or something that might not even happen, or the worry is really not in proportion to the actual problem. Now, we might all do that at some times, but remember, when this is happening for someone with an anxiety disorder, it's really quite prolonged and distressing, and it's happening most days about most different things, okay? And often it would be sort of what if sort of thinking or catastrophizing and spending a lot of time in the future thinking about all the possible worst case scenarios that could happen. So it's a real tick, 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 inability to switch off and a real inability to control that worry. And of course that becomes quite distressing and more difficult to get a manage on or get control over as time goes on. So that's the sort of thought process in terms of anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders can also have an impact on our sleep. So often people report some difficulty getting to sleep or staying asleep, or even waking up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and having trouble getting back to sleep. Because as soon as they wake up, their mind switches on, and then they start the worry, they start the thinking, they start the ruminating. Yes, again, most of us have probably experienced that, and it's generally short term. It's generally because there is something happening in our lives. So it's a little bit different to the more persistent worry that might happen in an anxiety disorder. So sleep, it can affect our appetite. Lots of people might report they're not eating as much, they don't feel like eating, and of course then that impacts our weight. We also have difficulties in concentration and memory, and we have a lot of other physiological responses. So some people report things like increased heart rate or difficulty breathing, or just a real sense of heaviness on their chest, sweating, shaking, pins and needles in our extremities, or numbness, and just an upset stomach or feeling a little bit nauseated. So they're just some of the physical symptoms that someone with a general anxiety disorder might experience. You don't have to experience all of them. You might just experience some of them, and that's okay as well. So they are sort of the general signs and symptoms of a general anxiety disorder, and obviously the difference between that and the normal sort of worry and nervousness that most of us experience. The good thing is that psychologists, there is lots of help available if this is something that you or somebody else might be experiencing. And psychologists are very experienced in managing anxiety disorders and are very well trained in lots of different techniques to help improve or reduce the symptoms associated. Hi Kim, thanks for joining. Just talking about general anxiety, anxiety disorders in general, sorry. So psychologists use a lot of different strategies around helping minimize those physical symptoms, and also helping with the thought process that occur when we're feeling quite anxious. And so some of those techniques are called cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy. There's a few different types that we can use. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there is definitely help available if you are suffering from prolonged anxiety and it's becoming quite distressful and you're having trouble switching off. You're constantly noticing, changes in your heart rate, difficulty breathing, lots of worry, then do go and see your GP and get some help, or ring your local psychologist and talk to them about how they might be able to help you. There's certainly lots of tools and strategies that you can implement to help with that. So that is me for today. That is just a general overview of what is anxiety. Tomorrow, I am going to talk to you about fight and flight, which is generally where anxiety comes from. So we're going to have a talk about going back into the caveman days and getting chased by saber-toothed tigers. And I'll explain the brain to you and how that all works and why we experience fight and flight and what that has to do with anxiety. So thank you so much for joining me, Kim. It's been lovely having you here instead of staring at a blank phone. And I will see you all tomorrow. Of course, if you have liked this, please do like and love, or of course share it with someone who might be suffering from anxiety or might, just find this useful and interesting. And as always, don't forget that there's never been a better day than today to take the steps to your thriving mind and your thriving life. Bye for now.